Exactly, so I will call the meeting to order. Mark Posmato had something come up and is unable to attend tonight, so everyone is stuck with me as acting chair. First up, we have approval of minutes from April 18th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to thumb through those? Any comments or edits?
Nothing.
I think for me, they're always fantastic. That being the case, would somebody like to make a motion to accept them as written?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, those are set.
Next up, NOI Jericho Hill Road, ROW. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, in the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, May 9th, 2024 at 7:00 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located within the right-of-way of Jericho Hill Road for the applicant James Rhines on behalf of the Massachusetts Electric Company. The project description is the installation of a utility pole and associated infrastructure. Melissa, I understand that we have, oh yeah, we just asked for a small bit of information that's been provided, and the DEP did issue a number. Hopefully
Correct.
that bottleneck has worked out. That was getting pretty slowed down for a while.
They're still a little slow, but at least this one and one others we got for tonight, so we should be good on that end. But yes, we did receive the plan. They outlined where the 2 dead ash trees were, which is really the only concern. And we got that DEP file number. If anyone has any questions, Kip is here on behalf of the applicant to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from the commission? If there's anyone from the public here this evening who wishes to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function in Zoom and we'll promote you up. And it looks like there is not.
I guess I had one question.
Yes.
The ash trees, are those public shade trees that would need to go through planning board and or tree warden before they're removed?
It's a good question. I can check on that, Kevin.
Okay.
Did you say they were dead, Melissa? The ash trees?
Yes.
They
Yes.
they're dead. Oh, okay.
But if they are, I can't remember off the top of my head if Jericho Hill Road is a scenic road. I don't know, Kip, if you would know that. But if it's within the town's right of way to get them removed, you do need approval from either the planning board or the tree warden. So I can I can connect you with that tomorrow just to double check on that.
Okay, great. Because of course, if we choose to issue an order this evening, that doesn't overrule the jurisdiction of anybody else. Or grant the authority to cut trees without permission. Anything else? All right, in that case, would somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Ben, since we have a time, do you just want to do the issuance now?
Yeah, let's do it. There's not much beyond our standard order, correct?
Correct.
If that's the case, does anyone have any special condition that has occurred to them they think would be appropriate on this project? Does not look like it.
No.
So if that's the case, I guess we just need a motion to issue our an order of conditions with our standard set of conditions.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right. Kip, I will probably have this over to you tomorrow by noon, and I will follow up with the tree removal as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Let's see. So we're moving too quickly here. We've got 5 minutes to kill. Is Breakneck Hill more than a 5-minute update? It sounds like
No,
it
I'll do it.
might be.
Yeah, I'll do a quick one as best as I can. So I'm gonna also follow up with you guys with an email probably tomorrow so I can update stewardship. But I did talk with Freddie briefly today. So essentially what we are running into is that we have a little bit more of the asbestos material than we were expecting. Not to say that that's necessarily bad, it's just that it's regulated a different way. So the pieces that we've been finding are very small. So the 6-inch spreader that we're using isn't collecting not only some of the solid waste, because there's things like cans, etc., that just fall through that 6-inch diameter. But these small pieces of asbestos, mostly roofing shingles and cement boards, probably associated with some of the structures that were on the property, or who knows what else. But essentially, over time they have degraded, so they're very small pieces. So as you're walking around on the site, what our contractor has seen is that there's a little bit more than they are comfortable with, because they are concerned with not being able to screen it out with that 6-inch screener. So what we are doing starting Monday is we're kind of changing tactic a little bit, because at this time, what would be easiest for the contractor was to say, okay, we've completed about 1/3 of it. The rest 2/3, we just say everything is this regulated soil, it has asbestos, and we dispose of it that way. That's extremely costly. It would be easy, we'd get it done super fast, but the price would be probably significant more just because of the volume that's left. So in order to mitigate this and try and find some other solutions, before we either go to select board or before we go back to DEP to look at other options that we could do, is starting Monday, we're going to do another grid test pit sampling program with Strategic. We're going to take a bunch of samples to determine if there are areas that we can continue to screen out, mostly around the periphery, to negate that, screen it out, backfill it, so that doesn't have to be incorporated into any final volume that we then have to dispose off site. So we're hopeful that there are areas. It's a little less pocketed than some of our other test samples once we kind of get in there. We're getting into the main dump area, so obviously there's going to be more material. So on Monday, they're going to excavate down to, one, determine how far down the asbestos goes, if it is just superficial, and just to see the total depth of the debris. Depending on what we find, if it's only down 1 or 2 feet, then we can be able to screen the rest of it further down, and the waste management company would be accepting of the soil, not concerned about possible asbestos in it. Alternatively, if it is determined to be too deep, previously DEP didn't want a cap on this area, but that might be back on the table if it is at such an extreme volume. It's might not be what you would think of in terms of like a landfill cap. It's a little less invasive, but kind of the same thought process, and covering it with that material and putting kind of fresh loam on top of it. So that's kind of where we are. It's kind of it could go a little sideways, but as of right now, we're trying to figure out what the best alternative is to be the most cost effective. Strategic is going to give me some numbers, kind of additional worst case scenarios. If they do have to consider everything that's left has to go, then they're gonna break down some cost numbers. They're talking with the waste management company to see if there's any additional rates that we can get that would be cheaper than the initial one, based on the volume. So that's kind of where we are.
Can I ask you what they're asking for a yard of contaminated material? Or ton?
I'd have to let me double check the bid
I'm
before.
just curious.
And I have it, I just can't remember off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
Okay, I know depending on what it's contaminated with, it can get pretty pricey,
Yeah.
hundreds of dollars per yard.
Yeah. And there's not many places that take this, and the ones that are usually all the same company. So we have different plants, but we're still going through the proper protocols. So it's kind of where we are. you know, if anyone wants to go out with me, I'm happy to bring you out. It is locked to the site, so you can't just kind of walk into the project area. But if you kind of want to get a look at what I'm talking about, feel free to let me know. We can schedule something next week while they're doing the test pits, or even tomorrow while there's no one there. So just kind of keep that in mind, but I'll hopefully have some better information by the end of next week. It should only take 2 or 3 days to do this bunch of test pits.
Okay,
Melissa, would it be helpful to you if some of us went and checked it out?
It's not much to look at. Yeah, I guess it's just, I think now that the trees are gone, now that they've kind of disturbed a little bit, you see more of what's underneath. And you really see what such a mixed bag it is that's back there. And just the random trash and metal parts, tires, etc. It's just, yeah, if you're curious and you're interested in it, I think it's very, it comes with a bigger understanding of what really happened over the years.
are you already planning on going out for the test pits?
Yes, I'll be out next week. Yeah. So I can always send you a message when I'm out there, and
That would
feel
be
free
great
to
if you
check it out.
could. If I'm available, I'd love to go.
I would too, if you send the
Yeah, yeah.
time to make it work.
Okay.
Great. All right. All right, we're past 7:10. Next up, notice of intent, 28 Edgewood Road. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, May 9th, 2024 at 7:10 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 28 Edgewood Road, map 16, lot 6, for the applicant John Kiley. The project description is the construction of a single-family home, driveway, and associated appurtenances. See, we have Susan MacArthur here this evening. Good evening, welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Susan MacArthur from MacArthur Environmental Consulting. I believe also in the meeting is Fred Schobel from DGT Associates, and Bert Corey from DGT. They're the engineers for the project, as well as John Kiley, who is the applicant and property owner. So the proposed project is located on the newly created lot at 28 Edgewood Road. The 2.175 acre parcel is undeveloped. There's John. Is undeveloped and there's no structures on it. It consists of forested uplands and wetlands, and is surrounded by residential parcels. It's generally fairly level with a slight rise in the back, elevations ranging from about 332 feet near the roadway to about 337 or so toward the back near where the house is proposed. There is an intermittent stream that flows in an easterly direction off-site. And there are forested wetlands on site associated with that stream. And those wetlands were delineated in May of 2023, actually May 9th to this day. So, so the proposed project consists of constructing a 400 linear foot long gravel driveway and a 2,400 square foot lot, square foot two-story single-family home with an attached 3-car garage, a front porch, a septic system. May I share my screen? I can. Oh, there you go. Okay.
If you want to share and control, you're more than welcome to, or I can bring it back up. It's totally up to you.
You can bring it up. That's fine. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, front porch, septic system. The roof runoff will be directed to 2 dry wells. One is it's so tiny I can't see, but one is toward the right side of let's see, yeah, in the back,
Yes.
right there, there's
Right there.
one.
Yep.
Yep.
And right there.
And the other one is, yeah, right there. So 2 dry walls, and a grass swale and 2 rain gardens are proposed to mitigate driveway runoff. As I said, the driveway is proposed to be gravel. And let's see, the proposed septic tank and soil absorption system is located at the southwest side of the house. So that area with the grading, Melissa, if you want to just point to that, yeah, right there. A septic system which will treat the septic tank effluent before it reaches the groundwater. And so grading is proposed to mound that area up. And so as you can see, the buffer zone to the wetland resource area is in green, the green dotted line. So some of that grading for the septic, yeah, right there. Some of the grading is within the 100-foot buffer, and you'll notice the entire house and the top part of the driveway, the porch and deck and whatnot, are all located outside of the 100-foot buffer. So we've made an effort to stay outside of. We do have erosion controls along the limits of work, the downgradient limits. So Melissa, if you could pan toward the bottom of the, yeah. So the only work proposed in the 100-foot buffer is the gravel driveway, some forebays that will direct runoff to the forebays prior to reaching rain gardens. So those are rain gardens proposed along the side of the driveway there. And there is a little bit of grading associated with the putting in the driveway. So in addition to that, we will need to remove some trees. Approximately 109 trees, 2 inches or greater, are proposed to be 2 inches diameter or greater, are proposed to be removed totally for the whole project. But within jurisdiction, within the 100-foot buffer, 31 are 2 inch or greater are proposed to be removed. You will notice, Melissa, if you pan a little more, we have designed this to stay outside of the 20-foot buffer. So the erosion controls are close to it, but we all work remain outside of that area. And I think that's it. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So first, Joe, I'd like to turn it over to you for just a quick review of your comments.
Sure. I did have a chance to go out and take a look at the site and review the delineation. There were a number of flags where I thought were somewhat on the low side, and would certainly be happy to meet with Sue on the site to take a closer look at some of those and come to an agreement on their appropriate location. Also, just noted that there is a fair amount of oriental bittersweet, some invasive vegetation, oriented bittersweet, some multiflora rose, and some honeysuckle on the site. Would recommend that the applicant provide a construction phase invasive management plan and a post-construction invasive management plan. The wetland at the front of the site contains a ponded area, which based on my general observations is likely a vernal pool. I did not do any kind of an intensive investigation looking for vernal pool organisms, but just based on observations, I would say there's a good chance that it's a vernal pool. As far as some of the material that was submitted, I noted that the abutters list was over 6 months old, so I just wanted to make sure that the appropriate abutters were all notified, that the right people were notified. I also had a comment just kind of questioning the project is stated as qualifying as a limited project for a driveway access where no reasonable alternative means are available. And typically, I've seen that used where that you have a wetland fill application or wetland fill proposed, and you can't meet performance standards otherwise. And maybe Susan could provide some additional information as far as the need for a limited project or why a limited project might be being considered for this work.
And Joe, Melissa did point out to me that that is only for, if you are working in the resource area. So, you can just ignore that then.
Okay. Okay.
It's fine. Yeah.
I had a question on the lot lines, but my understanding is that that's a recently approved A&R lot change. The rain garden description and the detail on the site plan provides a plant list and numbers, but it wasn't clear if the plants were proposed, if what was listed was for each rain garden or were to be divided among the rain gardens. So maybe just some additional information on what's proposed for planting in each of those rain gardens. Also, just a question on what exactly is being proposed for gravel for the driveway. I mean, is it a pea stone? Is it a larger stone? Or what is being thought of relative to that? And I think lastly, the tree removal plan indicated the location of all the trees that were being removed. I think on the NOI checklist, there's some wording that species information should be provided also. So maybe some additional information on the species breakdown of the trees that are being removed within the buffer zone. And I think that was pretty much covers my comments.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Let's see, first, Susan, if you or Bert have any responses you want to make to what Joe said, by all means, I'd like to give you the opportunity before we open it up to the commission.
Sure, if I could just speak for a moment. With regards to the gravel driveway, most likely that is going to be like a 3/4 inch minus. So it'll be on the smaller side of the aggregate. And as far as the plantings for the rain gardens, that would be in each rain garden. I know that we're probably going to be talking about, for the tree removals and things like that. If we have to come up with some type of a planting plan, then we'll certainly add the plantings to the rain garden outline. So you'll be able to see that on plan.
Okay, and the gravel for the road,
Gravel's for the driveway, yes, that's
for
correct.
the driveway, excuse me, I'm picturing crusher run, dense grade kind of material. Is that what you're envisioning?
No, we're not. Not a crusher run and not the aggregate. I just had a conversation with the owner of the property, and he prefers not to use that type of a material. Prefers to use more of an open graded type of a material, so that in case he needs to top dress it or repair any areas, he can do that fairly easily.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the repairs will be more likely needed without the dense grade material.
Yeah,
a little bit more of a concern with its adjacency to the wetland, with sediment eventually reaching the wetland, although there is the swale there in 4 days.
Yeah, and that's why we placed that swale adjacent to the roadway so that we could carry any kind of sediment or trap any type of a sediment. Any runoff would be directed to a sediment forebay and then into the rain garden. If you're saying that you prefer to have some type of a dense graded material, though, that's something that we could consider, even to put it under, maybe a smaller thickness underneath some other gravel. That would be, for the top dressing.
No, it was just more the nature of an observation, I guess.
Okay, okay.
For the rest of the commission, the difference is that this dense grade material, it packs down like iron. It really does. It's typically what's used on a dirt road. And it stands up to things like plowing and heavy moisture during the spring and so forth a lot better than the alternative, which we usually call like a bank run gravel or something like that. The bank run gravel tends to be a little bit more mobile, tends to move around with plowing, tends to soften up a little more in the springtime. So that was why I just asked for the clarification on it.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see, I had a couple quick questions. One is answered, so the A&R approval has already gone through planning board.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct, and that plan has been recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
okay. And Joe and Melissa, I forget how we've handled this in the past. When there's a potential or likely vernal pool, we have sought, I forget the mechanism, but sought to have the pool certified as part of the grant of an order.
Yeah, in recent, in the last 5 years, what we have done when there's been potential vernal pool habitat is within 12 months, an assessment should be done of the area and submitted to the Conservation Commission. And certifiable, if it's deemed certifiable, then to submit the information in natural heritage. If not, then the commission kind of has to review and approve that, yes, we received this, it does not meet the characteristics and hold habitat for vernal pools.
Thank you. And Joe, are we a little too late in the year to make the determination, or is there still
There's
time?
still time. Tadpoles are still around. You can get in with a net and hunt for some tadpoles.
It sounds like you'll be going. You've offered to go out to the site and meet with Susan to review the wetland delineation. Would that be an appropriate time to hunt around for tadpoles or egg masses?
That could be, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe, we can coordinate offline and, the time that works for both of us. Yeah.
That's it's sooner than later while the tadpoles are still there. I think we probably have couple weeks, I would guess. But much beyond that, we might start losing tadpoles.
Great. And it sounds like we might already have one edit to the narrative portion of the NOI application, and that's related to a limited project. And I agree that isn't needed for this project. You're going to be making an edit anyway. There's another edit that I think I'd like to see. Under the regulatory compliance section in the last paragraph of that, I'm just going to read it. Work will occur within the 100-foot buffer zone to BVW. And the second sentence reads, the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act regulations do not contain any performance standards for work in buffer zone. My understanding is that's not. I mean, there are certainly stormwater management standards that pertain to the construction of the swales, rain gardens, and forebays and so forth. So if the edits are going to be made, I would love to see that sentence stricken from the application materials.
Okay.
Joe, is my understanding of the act and the regs correct there?
Well, I think technically there aren't, performance standards listed for buffer zone as there are for the other resource areas, but you are correct, they do require. Buffer zone activities don't impact the resource area.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from members of the commission?
I was curious to hear a little bit more about the snow removal plans, and it's a very long driveway, and it looks like there's a mark on the plan of it's the snow's going to go on the side of the driveway. Is that for the whole length of the driveway? And just how's that going to work?
Yeah, that's correct. The snow is going to be pushed to the side of the driveway, with the exception of the driveway that's in front of the house. It would be pushed to the I guess call it to the north, top of page, over the there's like a 3-on-1 slope right there, and it would just be pushed over the edge of that that driveway.
Okay, anybody else?
I just wanted to ask about the abutter notifications. Was all that straightened out with the old abutter list that Joe noted and the certified mail receipts and all of that? Like, are we allowed to be doing this now? I guess is my question.
I notified everybody. I uploaded the proof to the portal. I did use the list that I'd received last fall, so so it is not this year's, but I can check with the assessors and see if there's any changes, you know, from the list that I sent out, you know.
Melissa, I can't recall if there's how.
It's 180 days.
180 days, okay.
That's how long the assessors certify their lists for.
Okay, are we within that window?
I think, Joe, you found it was just, and I think they actually might have got it sooner. Do you remember your date, Susan? I think it might have just been outside that 180 days.
It was just over 6 months,
Okay.
but I didn't count the days.
That would
Yeah.
probably move us over. If that is the case, Susan, if you could verify that the current owners were notified, I think it probably is likely that they were, but just in case, we have to make sure of that.
It looks like I received it October 17th. So, but yes, I hear you. I'll check. I'll check with the assessor's office.
It sounds like we're just outside of the 180 days. But I believe if all of the current owners were notified, then there's not a problem. Okay. Anything else from the commission? Okay, at this time, if there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this matter, please use the raise hand function. We'll promote you up. I see somebody's beating me to the punch. Mr. Primack, Melissa will promote you up.
So I'm just gonna do allow to talk so it's quicker.
Okay,
But
perfect.
yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm not technically in a butter, although from where I'm sitting right now, at least when I was younger, I could easily throw a baseball onto this property. It's the property line behind me is kind of screwy. That's kind of myself and 5 Powder Mill Lane are basically L's. So it's right around the corner. I submitted a letter earlier today to Melissa, which hopefully got disseminated. So I kind of had 2 things I wanted to say. One, I do think I misunderstood a little bit of where the wetland buffer in my letter, where the wetland buffer variance request is, where it's more toward Edge Hill or Edgewood rather, as opposed to toward the back near Powder Mill. That said, I'd say 3 things. I want to say, 1, on the vernal pools, you will find tadpoles because anyone who lives around here hears frogs all night long everywhere. It's not just a vernal pool. There are vernal pools everywhere around here. And again, candidly, the proposed project, removing 109 trees, let alone 30-ish within wetlands for a lot this big, it's just a damn shame. As somebody who kind of likes the rural aspect of Southborough, it's a shame. There's an enormous amount of wildlife back here. There are river otters back here. There are owls back here that live in those trees that will get displaced by a project that, for reasons that are beyond me, requires a 400-foot driveway as opposed to a 100-foot or 200-foot or even 300-foot driveway. This one apparently needs to be longer than a football field for some reason. And I guess that's my second question and point. And question I guess I would have for the owner or for the developers on this. This is a 2,500 square foot single family house that also is going to have a 3-car garage, a 400-foot driveway, and 3 permanent storage, not bins, what would we call them? Facilities on the lot. That doesn't scream residential to me. If you needed more storage space, you'd build a slightly bigger house. There's 2.5 acres of land here. Build a 3rd floor onto it. It suggests to me there's something commercial, perhaps. And I guess the reason I think that should matter to the Conservation Commission is what's exactly going to be going up and down this driveway, how often, how loud, and how much runoff is actually going to be going. I appreciate that there's going to be a depression next to the driveway, but it feels like there might be a lot of stuff going up and down that driveway. And if I was the Conservation Commission, and I mean, let alone the enormous number of plants that are going to be destroyed and what might be going to the wetlands, I don't know what's really going to be going up there. It is a strange plot, or it's a strange design. I will say, as someone who's lived here for 12 years, there is nothing like that near here. Big houses, small houses, houses in the middle of the woods, houses on main roads. Haven't seen anything like this. And then again, it's the final thing. The wetlands, for those of us who live on Powder Mill, who are in the back of this, we're pretty low. We already get a lot of water back here because basically I've got a tax abatement in part because of this. I'm basically all water behind me. This is almost by definition going to raise the water tables a bit, which matters to us in terms of flooding. And it matters to us because that's also our water supply. Whatever's going in here, we're all on wells here. So that's our water, and obviously a bit concerned. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Primack. Let's see. Mr. Corey, there were a couple of questions regarding the house placement, length of driveway, and some of the structures on the property. Are you able to shed some light?
Ben, I think Susan, is JK295 might be, is that the owner? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, let me check. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, that's me, John Kiley. Sorry,
Perfect.
I just
No,
used
no.
my work ID. As for the 3-car and the structures, I'm part owner in the other 2 properties that are but. So my daughter is going to live in one property, and I'm just going to have some. Instead of building a barn, I couldn't afford to build a barn. I'm going to put in the temporary structures just the off season, like got lawn tractor and stuff like that. And I'm not going to have a commercial, any commercial license or to bring equipment in. I'm just going to have the equipment that I have now, just like a couple of lawnmowers, and I'm going to use it just to maintain the property that's there now. Then I put the off-season snow blower in and a plow, and that's about it. And then but as for the 3-car garage, I just like to work on, tinker around on my own thing, equipment. So it's going to be like a shop type of thing. That's it. Just for doing stuff at night to tinker. That's it.
Great. Thank you. I see we have another hand up. Roy Baz. If you unmute yourself, good evening.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a direct abutter. So I'm at 7 Powder Mill, and I have a stream right behind my house that basically flows directly towards that property. There is definitely a vernal stream there. I have frogs that crawl all over my backyard, my sliders. Every time it rains, there are frogs that are basically on the sliders. That's one. So I second everything that Dan Primack said with respect to water tables, wells, etc. Has any study been done on the effect of those wells, of the water levels, etc., that this development will have? Has any study been done on that? Has that even been considered? Because all our wells are absolutely adjacent to these streams that are behind 7 Powder Mill, 3A Powder Mill, and 5 Powder Mill. So all these properties kind of are adjacent to 28, and all our wells are adjacent to that water, the water that's flowing towards 28, the new property, basically. So if there's no study been done on the effects of the water tables, effects on wells, and then the trees, etc., I would strongly request that be done.
Thank you, Mr. Vaz. I see the applicant's engineer has dropped off. What I can say is, as a Conservation Commission, our jurisdiction here is limited to what's allowed under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. And the kind of study that I think you're requesting doesn't fall within what we are able to demand, you know, under the statute. I will say that the stormwater management standards that the project has to comply with in the design of the stormwater features are intended to protect water quality, and that the applicant has been required to offset the effect of impervious surfaces by infiltrating rooftop runoff, and you know, has incorporated low impact development features to ensure that stormwater leaving the new improvements is clean. Oh, Mr. Corey, I see you've reappeared.
Yeah, our power building just lost power twice in a row, so we've dropped off and are now back
Okay.
up and running.
Okay.
Apologies.
So there's been a question regarding water quality and potential impact to adjacent wells. Did you hear any of Mr. Vaz's comment and question?
No, I don't believe, I heard you talking about
Okay.
the stormwater management standards, but that was when we came back in.
Yeah, we lost the power when Dan Primack was talking. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, with regards to water quality, the stormwater standards are intended to protect water quality. I see a hand has gone back up. Mr. Kiley?
Yeah, I had a question, a comment about the tree growth. When I grew up on that property, and that whole back section was all cleared animal. We had horses back there, so that's only 15 years old. A lot of that growth, and there's a lot of trees that are in that we want to take that are dead ash trees that are just falling down. But a lot of that growth, when the other people before they built their houses, that was all clear fields. That's just newer growth in the last 15 years, 20 years.
Thank you. Mr. Primack, I hope I'm saying your name right. Excuse me if I'm not.
Actually, Ben, before we let Roy go, just quickly, Roy, you are the owner of 7 Powder Mill, correct?
Correct. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, because those were the wetlands that were offsite. Do you mind, or are you okay giving permission to our wetlands consultant to go on your property to confirm where that wetland boundary is? That was one of the
Absolutely.
comments.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to get that while you were here, so thank you.
Thank you very much. So next up, Mr. Primack.
Sorry, I had a question, a comment. The 102 trees are being removed. Mr. Kiley suggested a lot of those were dead ash trees that had fallen. There are a ton of fallen trees back there. Most of them are alive, but there's a ton. I'm wondering, A, those 102, does that include trees that have fallen that are simply being removed, old wood that's on the ground, or are those actually all upright, still living trees? And then secondly, I appreciate this was cleared. I would say it was a little longer ago. I've been here 12 years and there are still there were plenty of 30, 40 bigger foot trees back there when I was here. I appreciate this was once all farmland. That's why there's a stone wall back there that used to be where where grazing was, even though unfortunately one of the engineers decided to put spray paint on it to mark with pink to mark a wetlands, even though it wasn't really their property. But I appreciate that. But what we have now is a very vibrant, thriving wetland and forest area that's going to be very strongly disrupted. And I appreciate it wasn't here 40, 50 years ago or 20, 30 years ago, but it is here now. And there are a lot of animals that live back there, and there's a lot of wetlands back there. And I don't know why we would be, I don't know, to me, it's an enormous number of trees we're talking about. It's a wooded area at this point. It's forest.
Just one quick comment is that our jurisdiction is limited to the buffer zone and buffer zones and resource areas. As I recall, roughly 100 trees.
31.
31 are located within the buffer zone, and the remainder 100 some odd are outside of the buffer zone. If there was no work within the buffer zone at all, in fact, the commission simply wouldn't be involved here. Where our jurisdiction is, our regulatory authority exists within the buffer zone and the resource areas. This is not to discount your concerns at all, Mr. Primack. I understand exactly what you're saying. We simply don't have the authority to issue any kind of conditions on work taking place outside of the buffer zones.
And I also do want to mention that the number of trees that they did collect are 2-inch diameter and larger. You know, that's the 2 inches are very small, not to discount that it's removal, but typically what we get counted are 6 inches and above. So I think the accumulation and the counting of trees is much more thorough than we usually get. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that some of them are, you know, very small. So it might be useful if maybe there's a clarification of maybe sizes, if, you know, a better identification of what the larger, more mature trees are, and kind of have a difference if things are scrub versus not actual trees, but larger trees.
Thank you, Melissa. Mr. Corey, were the tree sizes recorded in the field survey?
Yes, they were. The tree sizes were recorded. And also we found Fred, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was in one of the regulations or something to that effect where it said for any type of mitigation, it involved any trees that were were going to be removed 2 inches and larger. We saw that, so we recorded all of the trees that were 2 inches and larger. At the time that they were survey located, there were no leaves on the trees. Not to say that the surveyors would be able to pick out all of the different varieties of trees, but we had essentially bark and limbs to go from. So we just recorded the diameters of the trees.
And deciduous or coniferous, just the, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Use the needles.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
With regards to Melissa's suggestion, which I think is a good one, because I think we'll be meeting again. If you have that information, a breakdown on the sizes, I think would ultimately be helpful.
Sure, we'll do.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I see a hand up, Mr. Vaz.
You should be able to unmute now.
Yeah, so the question I asked, which when you were out, Mr. Corey, was, have you looked at the effects on well water? Because all the powder mill houses have wells absolutely adjacent to the stream that goes behind and on the properties towards 28. Has that study or has that even been considered? I know it's outside the jurisdiction of the Conservation Committee, but has that been considered?
Yeah, that was considered with the design of the septic system, not so much with the stormwater management, but with the septic system. We need to maintain, you know, certain required distances away from other wells. I don't know off the top of my head where the closest well is. I believe it's on the other side of the house at 26. I think, Fred, you might have that on a drawing.
Yes, that is well over I think it was 200 something feet away to that well.
Mhm.
Which is, and then,
Yeah, and the regulations are 100 feet.
yeah. And the system was designed, you know, in accordance with Title V. 340 feet is the closest well.
Thank you. Mr. Kiley.
Yeah, there was one other thing about the length of the driveway. I just wanted to point out that we're trying to use an existing path that's out to the field now. We're not cutting a lot of trees along the length. There's a few trees that it'll have to be widened, but a lot of those, there's been a few that are dead, but we're using an existing path that's been there since I was a kid that we used to use to get out back to work the field. So it's you know, you can drive a full-size pickup through that path. It's been there, like I said, since I was a kid.
Thank you.
Also, just to tag onto what John just said, the driveway is long, but it also positions the house in most of the work outside the buffer zone. Whereas if we started moving that closer, we're going to have more impact on the buffer zone.
Thank you. So as I see a hand going back up, Mr. Bass. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Of the 31 trees that are going to be removed in the buffer zone, how many of those trees basically are, can the location of those trees be circulated to the abutters of the 31?
Yep, that is the current tree removal plan, which includes trees all the way down to 2 inches and larger. That during this meeting has come up, we will be expanding that plan to show species and a more complete list, and limit that to 6 inches and larger. So that plan will be updated.
Mr. Bass, to answer your question a little more, yeah, so the plan is showing. This sounds like the information you asked for. This shows the location of the 31 trees within the buffer zone shown in green.
Yeah.
They are shown there, and they'll be identified with size and species.
Okay.
Roy, if you were one of the ones that I emailed the application to, this set is the last page in the plan set.
Okay.
If not, feel free to send me an email and I'd be happy to send this over, or any revised ones that we get.
Okay.
Thanks. So as I understand it, we do not have a DEP number yet. There's still some work to be done in the field that Joe will be representing the commission on, and some changes at this point to be made to the application materials. We'll say to concerned members of the public, of course, obviously, we'll still accepting any input that you want to email to Melissa in the interim, but we'll be looking at continuing this hearing until our next meeting 3 weeks from now. Before I do that, any last questions or comments from the commission? And are there any last questions or comments from members of the public? Okay, so it looks like we'll be continuing. Somebody want to make a motion to continue to our next meeting?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, and we have a second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. And we'll see you in a few weeks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Susan, I'll
Have a good night.
circulate an email between me, you, and Joe to set up a time to do the wetland flagging.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, next up, 20 Sears Road. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, May 9th, 2024 at 7:20 PM via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 20 Sears Road, map 64, lot 2, for the applicant Sandra Delbridge. The project description is the construction of a new single-family home. So another project where the DEP has come through finally with a number. They had a couple of comments that I presume have been forwarded to the applicant as well. First, do we have any? Let's see.
Do you want me to just do a quick
Yeah, you want a
breakdown?
quick update and
Yeah, so at the last meeting, after the last meeting, Lucas finished up the review. We got that over to the applicant, and they post haste got some revisions done this week. And I think, Joe, all of your comments were addressed. There was one about the DEP notification, but they did send that in via email, which is the accepted route for their policy right now. So I have that's satisfied. And yeah, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there was anything else that we were missing. Got some additional information about mitigation plans, etc. And we got a DEP number.
That is correct. I thought all the comments were addressed.
okay. And the comments from the DEP that came with the number,
They were to close out the old NOI,
which is our plan.
and yeah, and if the commission might consider the monitoring of the plants, I believe.
Okay, and they also mentioned, as I recall it, the possibility of a 401 water quality cert being required.
Yes, which was their comment as well on the last order of conditions.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from the commission? And before looking for a motion, if there's anyone here from the public this evening who wishes to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function and we'll have you join us. Mr. Moss, good evening.
Yes, a good evening, board and Melissa. This has been a strange trip, this whole project. It got off to a very unusual start with the pipe removal, NOI, and we kind of went sideways for about 4 months. And I think we're back on track. My good friends that I represent are anxious to get going, building their new house. They are the owners of the house. I think that was mentioned at the last meeting. Pretty much we're kind of we don't fight City Hall. We say yes on everything, and anything that came from Lucas's review or DEP, you know, we're yes sir. You know when can we start? So I think we did that all the way in good faith, and my people are excited to get going. The pipe removal, I'm only 4 doors away from this project, by the way, where I live on Sears Road. And I was with the actual contractor building a playset on my granddaughter's house this morning, and he's anxious to get going on the pipe removal as soon as we keep getting these heavy rains, and so there's quite a little water volume continues. So when it dries up, maybe in June is when we'll tackle that. But everyone's anxious to get going. The board has shown a lot of patience because this thing started in December, and probably none of us thought we'd be here today. But we really hope that the board can see that, you know, we have a really nice plan. We respected all the Wetland Protection Act the whole way through in the planning. And we'd like you to, you know, we request that you could close the hearing and issue us an order of conditions.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that's what we're looking at here this evening. If there are no questions for Mr. Moss from the commission or the public, I think we're next looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Zulik?
Oh, your mic's off.
Yeah.
I saw her struggling. All right, Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so, Mr. Moss, we typically, work on the conditions at the end of the meeting so as not to keep others waiting. We'll take care of that this evening, and typically Melissa will forward off, the conditions to you by email, tomorrow.
That's terrific. I thank you very much for all your board, your volunteering and all your hard work. And Laura and Melissa were very helpful along the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks. Okay, next up. 20 and 22 Turnpike Road. In accordance
So-
with the, oh, go ahead.
Bet, sorry. Peter had to jump off really quickly because he is on another meeting. So he's stuck in his middle of his other public hearing.
Oh, sure.
So if we wanted to skip over that for now.
Yeah.
And 120 as well is going to continue. And I know
So-
that the COC peoples are here, so I don't know if you wanted to switch those.
Okay, well, let's dispose of, yeah, we're past 7:40. Let's just dispose of 120 Turnpike right now. I'll just read the notice so we can continue it. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, May 9, 2024 at 7:40 PM via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 120 Turnpike Road, map 37, lot 120-4, for the applicant FD 120 Turnpike LLC. The project description is the construction of a 60-unit apartment building. The applicant is engaged apparently in a redesign of the project after hearing input from boards and community members, and has requested that the hearing be continued to our next meeting. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Okay. So COCs.
20 Sears, we need an invalid for the stream restoration now that it has an order.
Yes. Well, technically it doesn't yet, but it will soon.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Or it should be invalid before it is done.
Right, right. So we need a motion to issue an invalid COC for 20 Sears Road.
So moved.
And second,
Second.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton, Smith.
yes. Okay. It sounds like you've been hard at work on Dairy Farm Lane, Melissa
And Joe, yes.
and Joe. Why don't
I know
I let
Vito-
you run the show on this and let us know where we stand? Where number 14 is listed first. It sounds like some work still needs to be done to get it over the finish line, huh?
Yeah, Vito's here. Joe, if you want to go over your comments, that's the easiest. Thank you.
So at 14, I was out on the site April 25th to look things over. The site is stabilized, good grass growth, any erosion control barriers that are remaining, in my opinion, can be removed. The conservation monuments that are proposed were all present in the field. There's a drainage swale on 14, which the grading in it has some tire ruts kind of crossing through it. And just kind of eyeballing it, it looks like there's potential for maybe some drainage to be flowing not through the swale, but down toward the wetlands and possibly in some of those tire ruts. So I think that just needs to be looked at to make sure that the water is going to go where it's designed to go. But for 14, that was the extent of my comments.
Maybe we ought to go through, let's see, Yeah, maybe we ought to go through all three and then we can turn things over to Vito and get some feedback from him. So number 10.
Number 10. Again, the site is well stabilized by grass. The erosion, there was silt fence remaining that can come out, in my opinion. No erosion issues. The conservation monuments were all observed. There was some slight mowing several feet into the open space easement beyond the approved limit of lawn. So I think whoever's doing the mowing there needs to be reminded not to mow in that area. And there was dumping of landscape clippings and landscape debris within the open space easement and actually partly within the BVW near flags A46 and A47N. So that needs to be removed, hand removed, and I don't think there's significant amount in the BVW that would require any major restoration, but that should be addressed.
Number 12.
And number 12, as was noted in the engineer's letter, the only deviation was that a vinyl fence was installed within the rear yard, within the area that was approved for yard. Again, well stabilized by lawn, no erosion issues. The conservation monuments were observed. Also some mowing into the open space easement beyond the approved limit of lawn. There was also an approved and observed pile of stone and rock within the tree line, just within the tree line, but it was hard to know if that was construction related or may have been present prior to the current work on the lot. The other remaining comment was that the rain garden doesn't appear to have been planted as approved on the garden rain garden detail site plan. It was primarily grass and lower herbaceous vegetation, and we're supposed to have inkberry, winterberry plants planted in the garden, so those should be planted.
Okay.
And on all three of the sites, there was a special condition, number 44, pertaining to prior to requesting a certificate of compliance, the engineer of record was to certify that all cut materials used on the site were disposed of off-site in accordance with regulations. I just had a comment that I had not seen any documentation that occurred. I don't know if that documentation exists.
Okay. All right, thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Vito, good evening.
Good evening. How's it going? All right, so I'll just run through those three in the same order. I'll go 14, 10, 12. And then just on the general comment on the export, the project actually was a net fill. So they didn't have to export any material to dispose of it. Everything they kept on site and actually imported a fair amount to fill the whole road up and all the site to meet the grades. So it's really important on an export, but we can provide a letter just for the record, just to have that meet that condition for all three lots. All right. Number 14. So we did go out and I met Bob Torsha on site, the applicant. We went out there this afternoon and tried to just run through all these items just to make sure we get all the items and we could notify the homeowners and get everything taken care of. So on 14, we did walk the site. We didn't see much for the tire-ruts, but that's what we were thinking. Maybe we could meet on site with Melissa or Joel and just to kind of see where they were looking at. And if there are any tire ruts out there, we'd be more than happy to fix them, just to make sure nothing's getting diverted where it shouldn't be. So we can take care of that one, if we, after a site meeting or something like that. Number 10, there was some debris we did find, as you noted, that was in between those two flags. And anything down in the BVW, obviously they could take that out. Some of the other debris was, it looked more, had some topsoil mixed in. It looked like it was from a bed that might have been like a landscape bed created where you cut out the topsoil, and it's had some grass clippings in it, but it was mostly topsoil. So we want to talk with Melissa, maybe when we get out on site, and maybe just seed that area, just to get it stabilized rather than trying to pull it out and then also have to seed it again. But if it's determined that it should all come out, then they said they'd be more than happy to take that out also. But maybe those are just two items that we could kind of discuss on site, just to kind of see, make sure everyone's on the same page. And the mowing into the open space, it looks like it, in between all the bounds, it looks like the mower just kind of bowed in and out. It's probably a mower's deck wide, where sometimes they went in and sometimes, so it kind of wound in and out along the bounds. He did notify all the homeowners today through email, and he was going to follow up with phone calls just to make sure that they know that that's what those bounds mean, is that it should be a straight line, no mowing beyond that. One homeowner responded to him and said they were going to notify their landscaper just to make sure everybody knows, no mowing beyond those lines. It looks like they were trying to go with that. It's just they kind of wound it where maybe it was a foot or so into there. And they also told the landscapers no more putting grass clippings out there, so everybody knows what the expectations are. And on number 12, it's the same stuff. We did notice those grass piles. I think there was 3 or 4 of them. So we told them they have to get those taken out. And the stone pile was previously there. It was just part of the old farm debris. It's just off into the woods outside where the limit of work was. And then the rain garden, he's going to purchase the plants and get those installed in the next week or so to get that taken care of. So it's just those couple items we kind of might want to meet on site just to make sure we get the tire rut item and then the debris to make sure we're in agreement on what should be removed and how much, if that's possible.
Melissa, that's okay with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the next couple weeks, so just let me know.
Okay, that sounds good.
Vito, where are you just in the subdivision as a whole? What's left?
So they have lot 2, I think, is the last one that they're currently working on right now. And then once that's done, they just basically have the final cleanup and binder course. Any punchless items on the road. So it's just kind of the final cleanup. They have final top course, and I think that's about all.
Okay. I apologize, I forget off the top of my head. There was an open space lot related to this, which I think the time has gone past. Has that lot been built on, or is that
Yep.
still? Okay.
Yeah, that was one of, actually, I think it's one of these lots.
Yeah.
That we're talking
Okay.
about.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, it was a 2-year waiting period.
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
I
No.
think it was number 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the only other thing I don't remember if they have they were supposed to install a sidewalk or not. That could be some of the work left. I don't remember if that was required on the design plans or not. So other than that, it's just top course and cleanup.
And if it helps for the homeowners, it wouldn't hurt to let them know that we have begun, actually Lucas Environmental has been doing it the last couple years, open space monitoring for various subdivision open spaces around town. So it's not something that will go away.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just a subtle reminder that it will be checked even after this is.
And just as an aside, I think it was, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I did an inspection when construction was starting at this site. And there were some issues at that point with landscape clippings in the open spaces, grass clippings being dumped. So,
yeah.
Okay. Great. So it sounds like we have a handle on that. Thank you for coming in this evening, Vito.
No problem.
Sounds like we'll be seeing you shortly.
Yep, we'll hopefully see you next meeting.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
All right.
All right, I don't see Peter in the audience, so we'll move on to COC for 90 Deerfoot Road.
Yes, I believe Justin Petrie is here. I think he's just loading in. So at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, I forget how long ago it was, we did some mitigation plantings because they encroached into the 20-foot with the bulkhead. So those plantings have been put in. I did an inspection, they are there. So, you know, kind of following back up if we want to do the COC. I also met with the new homeowners of the property. They're very understanding of what the restrictions are. I do want to just mention while we're talking about this, they have, and I met with Justin and the homeowners. We're doing the mitigation plantings. They have two very obviously dead, I don't even want to call them trees because there's no limbs left. It doesn't even have bark left. But it's hanging over one corner of the house where there's a bedroom. And so if the commission's okay, regardless of we do the COC tonight, I was going to do our standard hazardous tree removal. And what I've been doing for ones that are clearly dead but are more in our 20-foot, having them cut at a 6-foot height so that the snag is left for wildlife. So I talked with that with the homeowners, and they were fine with that. So just as a heads up that there are two trees in the back rear corner, you know, very on the edge of lawn that just, there's bark, was all and branches all over the yard. So it was very obvious on that one.
Okay, so, yeah, get that out of the way first. Any objection from the commission to handling the trees as Melissa's discussed?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're good there. And then the only question is on the mitigation plantings. Are we comfortable issuing the COC now? Or do we want to wait until the end of a growing season to see if they make it through the summer?
We also have in the past, as just an option, issued the COC and had a requirement in 1 year to have a report and list on the COC that those plants are ongoing. I've been I put it in my calendar as soon as we decide on that. So in 1 year, especially now that I have the homeowners information, you know, to set that up to make sure that's done. That's one option. Or waiting at least till the end of the planting season to make sure that plants that were put in survive.
Do we have, I see Justin is here.
Yes, how you doing?
Good evening. So you've heard the discussion here. So I guess the first question is what is your preference? Is there a sale imminent where you need the COC right now, or is this you're just?
Yeah, the house sold and it closed maybe about a month ago. I mean, if we could do it now, we have no problem doing like a report in a year, as Melissa said, stating that like everything's healthy and surviving and hasn't been removed by the homeowners or anything.
Okay.
That would be preferred if possible. Just to kind of close out legal stuff with the buyers and their attorney.
Understood. How does the commission feel about that? We've had success with this approach over the past year or so. I feel fine with it. Does anyone have any objection?
I think it sounds reasonable.
And I'll also, Justin, I'll have you sign just kind of like a general acknowledgement that this is what we discussed tonight. So that kind of helps close that loop too.
Okay, perfect.
All right. With that.
I did have one question because last time when we were so focused on the bulkhead that I happened to open the wrong plan today and realized that the patio kind of appeared on the as-built, but they weren't there on the approved plan. Is
Oh,
that, did we discuss that? I don't recall.
I don't think we did discuss it. You're right. Justin, it's just a stone brick patio.
Yeah, I'd say like a paver patio.
But yes, there is one out there and it is within the approved limit of work. Yeah, I think we were fixated on the bulkhead because that went further than approved.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how, I mean, it doesn't look that big. I don't know if the additional impervious in the buffer zone is really worth worrying about. But it was just something.
I think it's like a 10 by 14 or those Not huge, but yeah, there is one there.
And the house itself was equipped with rooftop infiltration, is that correct?
No.
No.
I don't believe this one was.
I think this was when we had a little bit of pushback because it was just a single family home.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we had some plantings in terms of in lieu of.
Understood. Okay, and it's so it's a paver patio at ground level.
Yes.
What's the feeling of the commission? Is there any objection to issuing the COC, or do folks feel that there's mitigation necessary? The addition of this it's estimated about 140 square feet of impervious.
It looks small to me, so I think I'd be okay with it. But,
Elizabeth, Melinda? No.
I think it's fine.
All right, then, with that, and, well, it's not a condition, but using the mechanism that Melissa described for the plantings, does somebody want to make a motion to issue a certificate of completion? Of compliance, excuse me.
So moved?
Thank you. In a second.
second,
Sulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
yes.
ooh, Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Justin, we'll get that to you. I'll probably send you the acknowledgement first before we release the COC.
Perfect. Yep, no problem. Just shoot it over and I can get that signed.
You got it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, Peter is
Okay,
back.
I saw him in the audience.
So let him move over.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
I don't know if you need to open things. I'm sorry, I was
Oh,
not, I
yeah.
had to escape for a bit. Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, in the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, May 9th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider two notices of intent for projects located at 20 Turnpike Road, map 39, lot 28, and 22 Turnpike Road, map 39, lots 29 and 32, for the applicant PLB LLC. The project description is restoration of buffer zone activities that exceeded the originally approved work limits for construction of a self-storage and golf range facility respectively. These hearings will be held concurrently.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Peter Bemis, Engineering Design. Would I be allowed to share my screen, Melissa? Thank you.
Yes, please.
So I'm going to start with sheet 3, only because that gets us to Turnpike Road. And we made it the last sheet because it's really the split. Most of the activities for this site were located in the middle, very large properties here. So we've got two developments that coincide with each other, developed originally by PLB LLC, 20 and 22 Turnpike Road. 20 is referred to as the Town Line Rental Self-Storage Facility. And that's located here. Before that, there's the frontage for the building to the rear, and that is 22 Turnpike Road, and that's a Southborough Golf Practice Learning Center. There are no wetlands located in the lower reaches of the site, but you can see Turnpike Road here. And this illustration is probably going to be the best for just this initial discussion to show that in orange, we tried to show you what the originally approved project limits were permitted to be, if you will. And then in the gray, because most of the site work is all of the as-built work that we had done. So that is where all the detailing is, and it would be very difficult to try to change colors on all of that in AutoCAD. So we left that as its normal color coding and just brought this in. I know that might cause some confusion but I thought it was best for the commission to at least understand where we need to bring focus. So there's really nothing that's in that whole first reach of the site, other than what we have identified here. And this is the stormwater basin for the site. So all stormwater from the upper reaches of the driving range and the self-storage facility. Oops, sorry. Mouse got ahead of me here. Get controlled in this area. And there's an outlet control structure associated with that that will overflow. And then all the stormwater here goes through the site here at, see, we're 32 Turnpike. So I believe this is 30 Turnpike. It's the office building that's located in the back. It's a condominium office building that's located between our building, and this is 28 Turnpike here. And then the other view that you see here is the rear portion of the site. And this is going well off of Turnpike Road. And at the very back corner, there was an isolated wetland located here. And what they did was they cleared some trees into the 100-foot buffer zone. And they constructed it's called it's a training shed. So basically they can do golf simulations in here. And then it's connected by a driving tee area. That tee area was originally proposed. That's what's shown in the orange here. What we suggested in this area was to install some signs to indicate that this is the limit of any work activity and that there's a protected resource area beyond that point. This view right here does show parking lots and whatnot that do appear on the next plan. So I'm going to just advance then to sheet 1. And this is picking up things back at that detention basin. So we're going back towards Route 9. This is the match line for sheet 1 of 3. And this detention basin has not undergone any maintenance since it was constructed originally under, it was order of conditions 29701. And the other number was 683. So they're fairly old orders that had expired. So what we're telling the owner is that this has to be all dredged. There's a lot of sediment that's contained within the basin to the point where it's actually up to the flared ends, and the outlet control structure has a lot of vegetation in front of it. Ideally, this work gets taken quickly. Honestly, we frankly don't even have to wait for an order of conditions to do this. It's part of the O&M plan. It needs to be maintained. I've urged them to do this, and I know Paul was away. I do expect that he's going to return, and I just want to see this work done soon so that we can advance the growing back again. There's a lot of plant material here. That plant material will be put back in place. So we just take out all the sediment and we try to get some of the plant stock back in so we can get a jump on the regrowth. As we come back through this portion of the site, you can see the orange again is where the roadway was proposed to be to get up to these self-storage buildings. This is where it was constructed. And these are the buildings. So these buildings were proposed. They were never built. We've identified that. The buildings are these. They're fairly close to what was originally proposed, and the pave limits are much less than what was going to be originally done. So that's a good thing as far as the amount of stormwater that the site's generating. Another thing that's happened up here is that they were stockpiling snow, which I think you folks are aware of. Melissa is certainly well aware of it. And we are recommending that this entire slope be reconstructed and then restored. Again, most of this work is outside the buffer zone. This work could just proceed. It should be done as quickly as possible so that it can be stabilized before the heat of the summer gets here. Excuse me one moment. There's there's an overreach of work in this area right here. You can see in orange where the original activity was allowed to be, and then in gray where the proposed activity, excuse me, where the as-built activity extended. We're proposing that area just be basically left alone and put some boulders in here because there has been some history of what we can see as snow removal being pushed in this direction. And then we were going to plant in this zone here as well. And this area here is where we're going back towards the driving range now. So they put a pitch and putt in. This was an originally approved area. So on the site plans, we had proposed a work limit that followed this orange line here. That was allowed. There wasn't really no full definition on what this would look like. It was just a work limit. They built the pitch and putt. At one point, they were talking about putting in a mini golf, and that was not allowed use. So in this pitch and putt, there's a sand trap that's located right here. And that sand trap has had some sediment release. And so the proposal is to remove all that sediment, to put in basically a backstop so that there'll be no more transport of sediment from that area, and to do plantings along this entire stretch so that we can put back what's supposed to be the 20-foot buffer zone. Because you can see on the tree line, that's a little bit of overreach here of the work limit. As we get into this area, this is the parking lot. The parking lot shifted a little bit north from where they were originally proposed, but for the most part, they do follow the plan of what was intended. The work limits pretty much following what was intended. However, we are still proposing to put in some plantings along that limit of work to firmly establish where the buffer zone would be. And then on sheet 2 of 3, again, going back into this zone, we do have a note about the parking lots being shifted to the north. There's a stormwater management basin that was proposed. One was built, different shape, performing the same function. And there was a cart path that was constructed through here. That was never proposed. So what we're suggesting here is letting the area in the middle naturalize, but putting in some boulders to prevent any future attempt to go through here, and then some plantings at both ends. Getting back to the self-storage side, there had been like a sand bin that was in here for their snow. They had again overreached into this zone, so all that's going to get pulled back. Boulders get put in this area, and plantings throughout that zone. And then the last area is here. This is again another cart path that was put in to get to this building here, which is part of the driving range. That building was put in a bit too close to the buffer zone. It's on a slab. So a great deal of effort would be needed to remove all of this. So what I was suggesting was that we leave it in place, but put a permanent barrier to what the limit of work could ever be by putting in this boulder line here, and then do plantings. The only, I guess, positive thing from this was the path of least resistance for them to put in the path. Had they gone here, it was all ledge and then very large trees. So a canopy with something that could have been permitted, a canopy would have been lost where there was no canopy here. There were no trees that were displaced. And that's why I'm recommending that we just keep the impacted area as it is, but permanently keep a marking of it. And then do some restoration along that perimeter. And then in this area as well, again, it's out well outside the 20-foot, but give something back here is put some boulders here. So there's again, no further future reach, and let this area restore. I did mention this area, the scale of the plan, you might not have seen this, but that's where the plantings and the rocks were for the area again, which was another overreach over by the self-storage facility. We don't have we don't have a DEP file number yet. They did cash the check, so I'm in the system. I know that Melissa had asked us for some additional information on this, and we had not been able to provide that yet. And I'm sorry for that. Just too many assignments at the moment, and I will get it to you. I know I'm asking you to continue tonight, which I expect you to do, and I will have it in time for your next meeting, well in advance, so you can give it to your peer review consultant. I'll stop the share, and if you need me to resume it again, I will.
Hey, could
Thank
you pull that last
for
sheet?
the opportunity.
I'm sorry, could you pull that right back up, Peter?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Thanks.
Oops, wait a minute. I got to start the share first. Do you want it on a certain sheet, Ben?
No, right there is actually the very last thing you spoke about. I was scribbling notes, so I may have missed some of what you said, but regarding the cart path and the boulder wall that are within the 20-foot no touch.
Right here, yes.
And is it not possible to move that northwards to get it out of the no touch?
No, no, so that what would happen is you'd end up taking down some very large trees.
Okay.
And then it's ledge. This is all like a ledge out, like these trees are actually growing on a ledge outcropping. So I just feel like it really should just be left that way. I know Melissa walked the site with me, so I'll let her give her, her take on it. I just felt like the activity had already happened. You can't change that. And if they're going to come back to you with a new filing to put it in a new place, I just don't think we're getting anything good back. That's all. I'd rather try to find a way to keep what's already happened in place and restore more areas. I'll be happy to do more buffers or do more plantings or something versus taking down these very large trees.
That's how we typically
36-inch plus.
Yeah, that's how we typically handle something like this. If there's an encroachment within the 20-foot, during my tenure, we've never allowed it without some sort of mitigation acceptable to the commission. Melissa, you've walked that area. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so this specific area, it is an existing cart path, not previously approved, but it's utilized because the two properties were owned by the same people. So the access for maintenance made sense. In terms of if the commission is favorable to allowing the cart path to remain, I do agree with Peter that that is the location where the boulders should go. It's a very defined path. And yeah, there are just... It's a nice wooded area otherwise, so it would probably do more harm than good if that's to continue.
Okay, thank you very much.
I meant do more harm to do it elsewhere. Sorry, just to clarify.
Questions, comments from the commission?
I guess that shed that's right on the property line, it doesn't look like it's adhering to any setbacks or anything like that either. Is that going to be forced to be removed anyway by another order commission?
I suppose I don't know what permitting happened. We permitted the site for them. What year? I wrote it in my narrative, I think somewhere here, but this goes back to
I think it's like
early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't call back many times. and my office is a stone's throw away. So yeah, they kind of went off and did a lot of things on their own here. But I will say this, the driving range is under new ownership and management. I've met with the new owner. He's lives in Westboro and has made a substantial investment in this property. And recognizes that he wants to enhance that value and work with the commission. All of the things that I'm proposing here are the costs of PLB to restore. I mean, they transferred the property and that was a condition of sale. So they need to make good on this. But the driving range is in a new entity and they had to sign on to this application because the transfer had happened. PLB will still continue to own the storage facility. So that helps answer any questions, but I don't believe that I do believe the shed got some permitting approval. And they also have they do have easement rights over the power grid. They negotiated those from the Edison company. I'm not sure what the terms are for that, but they do have the right to use that right of way, which they have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Again, so they will be coming back to our next meeting, but if there's any guidance we can get Peter trying to look into before then.
Yeah, and just so commissioners are aware of what I've kind of asked for Peter to put together is kind of just look at our checklist. you know, I think the plans that he submitted are very helpful to look at as a kind of holistic view of what was approved versus the areas for mitigation. But I kind of was looking for a little bit more detail of the deviations and kind of the actual buffer zone impacts that were above and beyond. So trying to get that understanding. So that's kind of the gist of what I requested previously that we'll move forward with.
Yeah, I think that would be not just helpful, but kind of crucial in evaluating this. It sounds like there may have been a net decrease in impact to the buffer zone, at least in some places. But
Yes.
Peter, could you tabulate that? Could you, originally proposed,
Sure.
current? Okay, yeah.
There are some, we'll say there are some overreach areas too, where they shouldn't even have gone.
Right.
So I'm not gonna,
Understood.
I'm not gonna start to minimize that. They went in areas they had no permission to go in.
Understood, and we want to get this sorted out as well. And I think you and Melissa have identified a pretty good path forward. I think from the commission's perspective, I think that would be helpful. Originally proposed disturbance currently existing, and then the current proposal to remedy that with these changes, you're gonna restore this much buffer zone or what have you. I think would make it easier for us to wrap our minds around.
Right. Okay, and then the only thing I'd like to leave tonight with is the fact that because we are going to continue, we're asking you to continue, would be that I do want to advance with the stormwater management O&M. So I will keep Melissa abreast of the work when we start it. We did go out and clean all the catch basins before property transfer, so that was all done the beginning of this year. I can't remember, Melissa, if I actually gave you the report. No, okay, so I owe you a report on this because I wanted to start off on the right foot too with the new property and having that of record. So there are a few things that will happen, but again, that does not need, it's on this plan. It's part of what I've told you we're going to do, but I want to initiate it because we're going to start running up on the end of the month. And then June 15th, typically is the cutoff. We've had actually, I think, a reasonable spring, not compared to last spring. So
Yeah.
we should be able to grow some grass, hopefully, in this timeline too for that embankment. So
The dredging of that detention basin and the restoration of that, the functionality there, the detention basin itself was substantially built as originally designed. Is that a correct statement?
yes, it's the shape was shown on there, so you can see that
Okay.
it's pretty
Yeah.
much following it.
So I guess the big
Volume
question-
wise, I didn't actually do an actual calc, but we could do that.
Yeah.
And a lot less pavement got built.
Yeah, no, indeed. We're more about the grades. Is the invert of the outlet, where you had called for it, and are you, when you're establishing the new bottom of the basin is where I'm getting at here. You know where that's supposed to be?
We'll make sure of that, Ben. I'm not gonna come back to you and not have that answer.
Okay. Okay.
I'll take a note of that.
Okay. Anything else from the commission before we, I'm sorry, if there's anyone here from the public this evening who's joined us to speak on this matter, please use the raise hand function and we will. Yep, I see a hand up. Bob A. I believe if you unmute yourself, we will be able to hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can. Good evening.
Yeah. Hi, Peter. Bob Ackley here, 16
Oh,
Brook
hey,
Lane.
Bob.
How you doing, guy?
Good.
I have a couple of issues with this stormwater, since I don't know if the board's familiar with this whole project. It used to be Denny Satterfield's airstrip. And it kind of went straight where the road is now. And that's directly behind my house, probably about, Peter could tell you, could look it up, it's probably 60 feet to the road, something like that. And to the old runway, which is now the road. And then they pushed the whole runway right up to the old cart path. And then put a very pitched riprap wall there. Now, every time we get a heavy rain, I never had water come down the old road that's behind my house until that driving range was built. And when we get a heavy rain, all that water channels into the road and then comes right down into my property in the back. So, you know, Peter, you said that there was a drain up on there, on that water was supposed to go the other way. There's
Yeah,
a drain, there's
Bob, I'm
drainage
not
up,
familiar with what you're bringing up, but I have no problem looking into it for sure. I can assure you that all of the road is collected with a closed drainage system that discharges into the basin. So nothing from the driving range of the parking lot improvements, the access road, all of
Right.
that goes down to that basin.
I believe that to be true, Peter. I'm talking about the riprap wall on the back that goes down. So what happens is you used to have 50, 60 feet in between the old cart path. You know the road I'm talking
I
about.
do, yes, I do. I do.
It's the old cart path that it's the border there now. That's 40 feet wide. I own 20. PLB owns 20. So what happens is that water channels right down into my part. Now, I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that, but that wasn't supposed to be like that. Now, that goes right down to the point down that road where the pipe comes across from the detention basin, correct? It goes into
No,
Forest Side Office Park into that.
it goes
catch
into
basin.
Forest Side. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
We
that's what
tie
it's
into
Forest
Forest
Side.
Side. Yep.
So, what I'm really curious about is that you designed that place. Did you design that to have a snow dump there and have all that contamination go in there? What has that ever been tested in that basin to see what's in there after all those years of dumping? Do we even know if it's been approved for that?
Yeah, that I'm not here to speak on that because I'm not, it was nothing that I really was involved with. I just know what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the current plans, there's no calculations for a snow dump.
Again, we designed our stormwater system based upon the impervious areas that were shown on the site.
Right. Okay. So the other thing I'm curious about is the old, what we used to call the deer pond. When Denny had it up there, the little, where the line goes right through on the map. There was all kinds of trucks parked around there. There was like a trash company up there or something. Is there still all kinds of trucks right in that area?
I have no knowledge of that. The only thing I'd circle back on was I would state that our as-built work was associated with the improvements around the wetland for the conservation filing. You had mentioned the area that you were concerned about was in your backyard. I honestly did not go back there because it wasn't real. There was no wetlands. There was nothing to be concerned about there. But I, as a courtesy, would go out and look at that so that we at least understand what's there. So I will leave that with the commission to know that we will at least go out and see that area and understand it better, so that I do have an answer the next time I see you.
Okay, I mean, that's fine, but that, really concerned us that, we've had flooding here. I've been here over 30 years and, it's just gotten worse. And, we've had the snow dumping issue for many years. Luckily, this year we had no snow dumping. I had complained to the Conservation Commission before about what's going on with this snow dumping going on, and it's going right into that catch basin behind Forest Side Office Park and then going right down into the brook. So nobody's ever said anything about what's in that detention basin, what kind of contamination's coming down to my property. I have no idea which way the water goes up there. So I know when I get a flood, when we get a heavy rain, all that water runs down that riprap and comes down the old road and just rushes down there. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. And so Peter, it sounds like when you come back next time, you'd be prepared to speak a little bit about the drainage in that area.
Yeah, the one thing I could probably assure Bob of is the fact that the detention basin itself and then Forest Side, because I'd actually helped Bob repair his septic system, so I know where his home is and the relationship between the two. So his home is much higher elevated than where the stormwater leaves the site, but that doesn't discount the fact that some waters from this site could travel to his property because the rear portion of the driving range is much higher. So I will go out and investigate it, and we'll see what the watershed is, and I'll be prepared to speak on this at the next meeting.
Great. Great, and with that, Bob, I see, oh, your hand is still up. Is it just, if it's just left up, that's, oh, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing further from the commission, then looking for a motion to continue the hearing until our next meeting.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Oh, your mic's,
Yes.
oh, Smith.
yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Have a great night.
Yes, you take you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, so moving back onto the agenda, we're at a potential violation at 200 Southville Road. So you've been speaking with town council.
Yes, so a quick update on that and a quick look at the attendees. It doesn't look like property owner is here. So for 200 Southville Road, on Tuesday's select board meeting, they did authorize town council to move forward with enforcement violations. I did speak with Liz Leiden, our town council today, and stating that we had our meeting tonight and confirming the path forward. So she did still recommend that the commission, we have issued our 2 letters of notification. The second one was certified. It was signed off on. I do have the green card, so it was received. We have that confirmation. So essentially, we've done our typical 2 notification, and if the commission is amenable or is that the path they want to take, we could issue an actual enforcement order under both the WPA and our local bylaw. That kind of further sets the clock, per se, in that if we issue this official violation or administrative order under our bylaw, that also starts the clock for accumulation of fines if we were to determine to assess them in the future. So that was her recommendation, if the commission is comfortable issuing that enforcement order, because we do have to kind of put our case together prior to bringing it to court. But that is kind of the next step in what we're doing. So it'd be a joint compilation of Board of Health, building, any kind of state regulations in terms of life safety, for the trailer aspect of it. And then also including our Wetlands Protection Act and any local bylaw violations. My understanding is that the property owner, has been made aware. He was at the select board meeting a couple meetings ago. I know Liz also mentioned it to him that we were, bringing this up. So he's been even verbally stated that we've been discussing this. I have not heard any communication from the property owner. I understand from the neighbor who has been kind of making these complaints or statements to us that in the past couple weekends, there has been some activity in the back there, little bobcats, etc., moving things around. So there is kind of additional work, of what total matter, I'm not quite sure. But at least, in my opinion, I do feel that the commission, has some valid reasons and obligations to issue kind of an enforcement order. We've tried and haven't kind of heard any communication whatsoever. And I think it's pretty obvious, even just looking at some of the last, 7 years on the aerials, that there's been a lot of alteration. Even if it's not fill of direct wetland resources, it's definitely within our buffer zone, and other resources. So kind of determining, up to you guys, how we wanted to move forward. But I think the reasonable next step is, unfortunately, probably a enforcement order, cease and desist.
Well, it's a shame that we've gotten to this point, because I hope the property owner realizes one way or the other, the property is going to get restored. And we always try to work with folks. Frankly, we kind of bend over backwards just to achieve the goal of getting things restored and allow a very reasonable schedule and so forth. But we've just haven't gotten any response at all. It's troubling that if there's a bobcat back there doing some kind of earth moving, we're at a point where we need to be involved, and this shouldn't be going on without us Even if the attempt is being made to restore things, at this point, our involvement is pretty much mandatory. I feel like we kind of been backed into a corner here, and I don't think we really have a choice, unfortunately. I guess so Melissa, would we be looking at something like talking about the contents of an enforcement order, you drafting it up and then voting for it at our next meeting in 3 weeks, or are you hoping to get one issued in the interim?
Yeah, we can do it a couple of ways. I think for a timeline point of view, getting something out sooner rather than later is useful. I do have the ability as an agent to issue an enforcement order myself, and then you guys ratify it at a next meeting. That's something that I can do drafting with town council. And Ben, I can include you and Mark just for clarity's sake, if that's something that you guys want to move forward with. Otherwise we can hit some kind of high points tonight and do it that way, or have a draft for the next meeting. It's totally up to you guys and whatever you're comfortable with. I'm prepared for any of them, and town council is available for us as well.
Unless the commission has any objection, I feel like we should give Melissa a little bit of backup by discussing it here, so that when you issue an enforcement order, ideally we've already conducted a vote. We should. You're going to be the front person on this and the lightning rod. That's pretty much the least amount of support I feel we can give you. Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
So essentially in talking about an enforcement order, and I just want to pull up the actual state form. There are, some findings, which I think our findings are pretty laid out. We know, that there's been alteration of wetlands and or buffer zones, and that has been in our letter to attend. So that kind of the findings is pretty consistent. In terms of our order, that's probably what I want the most guidance from you on. So our options, and we can choose more than one, which I would suggest we do, is that the property owners, immediately cease and desist. So that is obviously the first check that we would do. Resource area alterations resulting from said activities shall be corrected and the resource areas returned to their original condition. And then subsequent to that, a restoration plan shall be filed with the issuing authority on or before, and then a date. And, for what, which is mostly what the findings are.
Previous to the restoration efforts.
Yes. The other options, are complete the notice of intent, which is kind of similar to a restoration plan. It just depends, what avenue you want to take, and it doesn't. Submitting a restoration plan requirement doesn't negate your ability to then ask for a notice of intent later. And then no further work shall be performed until a public hearing has been held. And then if there's any immediate actions that we want them to do in the meantime, which in this case, I would say no, that's usually when active work is going on. And there's, sedimentation issues. So it's more, I think in this case, appropriate for just the cease and desist, unless there's, something else that you guys think should be included. I know he has equipment and solid waste, so that's kind of be including in it as well as removal of that. So in terms of the restoration plan contents or notice of intent contents, do you have any preference on checking off? Or Joe, should we check off both or just one? Do you know? I feel like
if we issue an enforcement order
that
doesn't have a specific requirement for an NOI, can we then subsequently say, and you've got to give us an NOI?
Yeah, I think so. What we could do is we could further condition, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more clearly, and kind of our narrative, that the restoration plan is kind of step one. And then, if necessary, we can put in our narrative that the commission may require the submittal of a notice of intent based on findings of the restoration plan. Joe, what do you think about that?
I mean, my thought is, if he is truly seeking for a permanent modification of land within the buffer zone or resource area, then a notice of intent is absolutely required. But if he's going to sort of, submit to the Wetlands Protection Act and simply restore it to its original condition, I think that could be done under an enforcement order and a restoration plan approved by the commission. And I feel like a notice of intent, I'd love to hear why I'm wrong about this, but I would feel like a notice of intent might not be necessary in that case.
I would tend to agree with you, Ben.
Okay. But if he ultimately wants to keep some of these changes on a permanent basis, then
Then the notice of intent.
yeah.
Got it.
And then, yeah, we have a pretty new commission here. We haven't really dealt with fines in a long time. And that's been really nice, honestly. So what we've done historically, and I've always been kind of proud of this, is that the only time that we have, so first the enforcement order starts the clock ticking, as Melissa said, for fines up to $300 per violation per day. And that can add up really quickly. We had one project where we sort of, after begging and pleading, frankly, and getting no action, we started assessing fines. And once the work actually began in earnest, and it was clear that the violator was taking it seriously and doing the work, we put the fines in forbearance until the work was done, and then ultimately dismissed the fines. In other words, we use them only as a tool just to get compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act and our local bylaw, but we've never used them in a punitive way. That's sort of been our past practice. We're not, locked into that, but I've always been kind of proud of that. I joined the commission, mostly because I just wanted to meet people in the community because I was new to town. I didn't want to be a police officer. Anyhow, that's just some back history on the commission and its fining authority.
So I admire that. I do think there has to be an incentive though to fix the problem.
Yep.
So I would think that these are serious fines if somebody's not being cooperative.
Yeah, and it's been kind of made evident to me. I know the interim building commissioner has actually spoken with the property owner. He's met them on site and kind of outlaid everything that he needed to do, mostly related to the trailer that is there that someone is living with. Since our last meeting, the neighbor also did have an additional altercation with the person living in the trailer. So someone is still living there, even though the property owner has told us otherwise, or has told the town otherwise. They also stated they would already get the trailer off and it still remains there today. So, there's some more immediate actions that the town is focused on in terms of the mobile home that someone's living with. It's been altered, definitely without permits. There's not really running water, there's no septic, etc. But like by the time that we get this in front of a judge or to court, this sets us up for a better ability to join in on that aspect at that time. And it just makes the case a little bit stronger. And it might, if we do decide to issue fines, it gives us a little bit of a better avenue to recuperate any, costs that might incur because of this as well.
Oh, good point, Melissa. So one thing we have done in the past, the development off of Oregon Road, the townhouses there.
Johnbrook?
Yes. While we ultimately did not assess fines, we did require that we be reimbursed for the extraordinary expenses we incurred for, in this case, it was sedimentation was leaving the site in a pretty serious way. So we had consultants out there a lot, and Melissa, was that you at that point running out there?
I was the tail end, yeah, me and Matt.
Yeah. So to reimburse the commission for those extraordinary expenses, we did require that. And hopefully we don't get there with this project, but if we do, you know, I think that's entirely reasonable just to be reimbursed for these expenses. We do not have an unlimited budget by any stretch of the imagination. So we're talking about an enforcement order that first issues an immediate cease and desist order on work within buffer zone and resource areas. Second, requires that a restoration plan be put together, presented to the commission for its approval. And
We need a
third,
date for that as well.
we need a deadline for that, which shall be submitted no later than our next meeting is the 30th. You know what, if we're gonna, when do you think you would be able to physically issue the order, Melissa? I don't want to put you under the gun.
I would say, let's say Monday.
Okay, so.
Because, yeah, I want to make sure town council can maybe have a quick look at it too.
So if this gentleman works in earnest to respond, I think this would involve hiring a surveyor, an environmental consultant, and so forth, and getting something put together. I don't think that could realistically be done. And I think the 30th, our next meeting date, that strikes me as about the earliest reasonable deadline we could give. Does that make sense?
Yep. We can also have the kind of date in there, but in the description of what the restoration shall include, we can always have a note about just notification to the commission regarding contract of services. If he has some signed agreement or something like that, that at least demonstrates progress, and that helps to put a pause on any potential accumulation of fines. So as long as the commission is kind of understanding and accepting that if we set a shorter date, that, and with the understanding that in the interim, there might just be kind of hopefully a communication versus a hard pressed plan by, X date.
That's a great idea.
Do people who are in this situation need help figuring out how to find people to fix the problem? Do they come to you for that, Melissa?
Yeah, I would say the letters that we've sent out about potential violations, the people who get back to me immediately, I would say a lot of things are, I hate calling things minor, but take 38 Presidential, which they'll have our application to us shortly, where they had just kind of cleared some vegetation in the backyard. They thought they weren't doing anything wrong. They had some really low spots and they were filling in. They gave me a call. They wanted to have a discussion, and usually what happens is I meet them on their property. We take just a general glance around the property and say, this area is protected natural wetlands, there's buffer zones, and we go over kind of the educational part about it, of what those things are. When the commission gets to a point where, they need to hire someone to do a delineation or something, yes, then I do kind of explain to them what that process is. And that usually, in the past, we have accepted that as kind of work towards the goal. So as long as there's been consistent progress, obviously the industry takes time. It's becoming summer, consultants are busy. So I've always taken that initial communication as a good sign, as that's when you have reached out. That's kind of when you started your cooperation. So if things kind of drop off from there, you can kind of tell where things will go, definitely. It's kind of a long-winded way to say, yes, they do ask.
So when we notify them in writing that there's a problem, do we say, and you can come to the conservation commissioner to learn how to mitigate the issues?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I always put on, I think, any letter I send at the bottom, any questions or comments, please at your earliest convenience, reach out to the conservation office and put my email and phone number. I also usually try and do links to like our commonly asked questions and any of our regulation stuff. So they have at least that immediate resource that they can go to, you know, if they get it on a Saturday or something, and they want to try and look into it.
So with the cease and desist, if they don't cease and desist, what happens?
So if they, the date that we set as, you know, our deadline to submit this restoration plan, by issuing this enforcement order, it allows us to both, by the time they receive it, if they continue, if we have evidence that they are continuing to alter the rear of the property, that is kind of an ongoing violation. So there's one violation. If they then have failed to submit the restoration plan by, you know, said date, then, you know, that is another violation of the enforcement order. So it kind of gives us multiple avenues of enforcement. And it's really the first big stepping stone to, you know, DEP gets a copy, you know, and towns with bylaws have a little bit of an easier time doing, not easier time, but have a better avenues to recoup any costs or services. And sometimes this will put it on DEP's radar. And if they have to step in, they have also done that. And they have also assessed fines. That happened to me in my previous town where we didn't have a local bylaw. Someone had cleared almost every resource area under the sun, you know, in endangered species habitat during breeding season for turtles. It was everything. And it was something that the town could handle necessarily, but the ramifications of what was actually done, you know, needed to be better addressed. So DEP at that point stepped in. Because we have a local bylaw, it allows us to issue fines and enforcement action on our own and move a little bit quicker if necessary.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, and of course, you know, the instant the property owner decides to take this seriously and contact Melissa, you know, we shift into you know, being a helpful partner and trying to get this taken care of. We just gotta somehow get the person's attention, I guess.
Yeah.
So here we are. Yeah, we've talked about what the order will contain. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Any changes you think should be made? Any additions, subtractions? Okay.
Ben, I feel like the contents of the enforcement order, because we decided on the order, if you're comfortable with voting, you know, we covered a bit. Otherwise, we can move forward with just ratifying at the next meeting.
I'd like to have a vote, even if it's to, you know, vote to authorize you to issue an enforcement order generally as discussed.
Okay.
I know you have the authority on your own, and
No, I like that.
and I know you'll work on wordsmithing of it. And if you know, want to contact Mark or myself while doing that, obviously would be available. But would somebody like to make a motion that the commission authorize Melissa to issue an enforcement order generally as discussed here?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Okay, so if I can help out in any way, you know, always just fire off an email or a text, and
Thank you, Ben.
of course. All right. All right, you're up. Conservation agent report.
Awesome. Update on open and active sites. It's not really much going on. The projects that are open are kind of winding down. You know, 5 Corderville, the house is pretty much there. just doing interior work. They still have all their landscaping to do, etc. The town planner and I have been trying to figure out a little bit more about, I think it's 200 Turnpike, the contractor's yard, or the landscaping business that's kind of off Route 9 that they've cleared a bunch. They seem to be kind of at a standstill, so they have kind of roughed out their parking area, but it doesn't appear that they put any drainage in yet. So we're kind of getting on them to start their stormwater work, and then understand of a better timeline of what that will look like moving forward. That's kind of most of on the open and active sites. I think. And then went over the dump very quickly earlier, but I will follow up with you guys in kind of a summary email. I've let the town administrator know, and I'm going to do the same thing with him and just trying to figure out our next steps and what next week will bring. In terms of the leaf dumping on Wentworth and Edgewood Road, this one got a little interesting from the last meeting. So we sent the homeowner letters to 7 and 5 Wentworth, and I met with the homeowners of 7 Wentworth. They came in last week, and I got a little bit of a different story than what was proposed to us before. They moved in about a year ago. They've only had really one discussion with the homeowner that's adjacent, and it wasn't as pleasant as expected. And they kind of been a little bit feeling watched in their backyard. So my understanding is that, yes, once last year they did have a landscaper come out that had deposited some material. The homeowner came over, mentioned it to them, and they ceased work from them. The gate was installed along the back stone wall because there was an existing gap in the stone wall, and they have kids and dogs, and they essentially didn't want their kids and dogs to escape their yard. So that kind of made sense a little bit more. I also talked with the homeowner of 5, and just kind of gave him a rundown, and it was kind of the same discussion that we had. So both homeowners, mostly at 7, they removed that one pile from last year. They stated the majority of it was from the previous owners, and obviously they will not continue in the future. So in my eyes, I think we can close this item out unless you guys have any other concerns. Obviously I'll continue to follow up with the Edgewood homeowner as well, just to make sure that any permissions that's needed on his property to do that one pile is given and sought from, so that can be resolved. So that's kind of where we are on that. And then for Chestnut Hill Farm, I put together kind of some initial questions. I didn't know if, since we have Joe here still, maybe Ben, did you want to do the issuance for 20 Sears? And we can let Joe be free after that, perhaps, and then talk about Chestnut.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do that.
Okay. Not to throw things around, I'm sorry. So I sent out very quickly, and I'll pull up really quick here, some of the findings of fact and conditions that I put together for 20 Sears Road. The majority of them are kind of a direct copy and paste from the previous order of conditions for the stream restorations, which is kind of everything from number 6 down, is kind of pre-existing ones. So the ones that I had was mostly related to the plantings. So I outlined what the plantings were. And then one thing that I wanted to discuss was, what did you want to do in terms of monitoring or success rates? There's not a terribly large amount of plants that are proposed. So I didn't know if an in-kind replacement was better in this circumstance due to the number, or if the 80%, as we usually do, would be sufficient. And what would you want for any reports or monitoring that we would want in, usually we do the first 2 years at the end of each growing season. Maybe talk about that one first. Does anyone have any?
I mean, our standard procedure is 80% survival rate, and then reporting annually for 2 years. I feel generally comfortable with that here. I understand your point that it's sort of a smaller area.
Yep.
But yeah, nonetheless, I mean, that's sort of what we've done for so many applicants in the past. I don't know, does anyone else have any feeling on it?
It's consistent with what we've done. So
Yeah.
I have heard comments from people saying, why not 100%? But yeah. Precedent matters, right?
Yeah, and when you're trying to recreate a wetland, it's this comes from also from experience. It's sometimes the hydrology under the ground, you can't really perfectly predict how it's going to be. You're going to get some die off in some places. You can't guarantee 100%. But I feel like if you get 80%, you ultimately are going to have a healthy area.
Are you okay with this sentence as long as I tweak it a little bit to reflect the 80%? So that would be for ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
And then I think the other things that I wanted to have you talk about was the limit of lawn. There's the limit of lawn as existing, which is kind of where the existing silt fence is. We're on the site plan, it's kind of that lighter gray that's a little farther out, because the new limit of work is slightly interior to the existing area that's been mowed. Does the commission want to make any finding or discussion about the limit of lawn or mowing limits in the future?
The existing limit of lawn, such as it is, certainly doesn't encroach into any 20-foot no touch. Is that a correct statement?
Let me pull it up. I
Yeah.
thought there was one area where it was close, if not in.
I feel like that we would probably want to avoid.
Yeah.
It looks like they're right along the 20 in one area.
So the question is,
In the old plan, hold on. But in this one wasn't the one they just submitted. So this over in this section.
oh, the existing silt fences.
Yes.
I see why you flagged this, Melissa. Okay. I mean, I feel like the new limit of work as defined by the proposed erosion barrier is really, yeah, they're talking naturalized meadow plantings outside wall line.
Yeah, I thought that we were gonna let it go wild beyond the retaining wall there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's what it kind of sounded like, so I think it might be maybe nice to put in that condition.
That's a good idea.
So it would, yeah, 'cause I think, and Joe, correct me if I'm thinking wrong, but I think a lot of this was even mowed because that's why they culverted it so that they could get
That's
through
correct.
here.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So with this being a stream channel, this will make that 20-foot no touch, which I think, to mitigate and to prohibit the slow encroachment down to this little stream bank, which will be, we might want to condition that the proposed erosion control is the limit of lawn.
I think that's a good idea. Just in case.
Yeah, because I remember standing on the other side of the silt fence while we were doing our soil loggers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any objection to that on the commission?
Yeah, it seems consistent with their plans anyway. I think they were
Yeah.
just gonna go wild beyond their
So
fence.
was that the proposed erosion control as the limit of lawn or the proposed retaining wall as the limit of lawn?
I think their manufactured lawn was gonna be within the retaining wall.
And
So
then there was a
maybe,
naturalized area
yeah,
beyond the wall.
so maybe the different phrasing about it.
They said
Yeah.
naturalized meadow plantings, they called it, and they may be envisioning like a once a year type mowing to keep the brush down or something.
Yeah, because they were gonna put down a wildlife and or wildflower mix, the New England for seeding,
Yeah,
that whole area.
Naturalized meadow plantings outside this retaining wall to be mowed no more than, at a certain frequency.
mowed once a year for brush management or something
Yeah.
like that.
Something like that.
So areas outside, areas with naturalized planting shall be mowed at a maximum.
Yeah, no more than once yearly for.
Invasive control, yeah.
There we go,
Maintain meadow, yeah.
for meadow maintenance, okay. Should I put like established lawn shall,
Turf lawn, something like that, above the. Not to extend beyond the retaining wall.
Yeah, turf lawn
Yeah.
east of the retaining wall, yeah.
okay. Perfect. Okay. And then the rest of the conditions were carry over directly from the stream restoration order.
Perfect.
Okay. I think I'm good.
Okay. In that case, is there a motion to issue an order of conditions with the conditions as discussed tonight?
So moved.
And a second?
Second,
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, Joe, we'll let you free.
All right, have a good
Thanks.
night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, so I'll try and go over this quickly and not ramble as much as I have the rest of this meeting. So for
I
Chestnut
have
Hill
like 4
Farm.
minutes before I'm gonna pass out.
I know, well, clearly same. So for Chestnut Hill Farm, I initially put on here request to SVT and kind of thinking about it a little bit more. I'm wondering if the commission is favorable. We discussed this a little bit at the last meeting with the trustees and having a formal town council request. I know we kind of did one a few years ago when we had previous town council and it was a little bit confusing, but now that there is kind of some more extensive changes at the farm, some things that I was looking at and what I think I would like to get a better understanding from town council is a couple things. And I will just share this to, I don't have to word vomit at you. So one thing is just if the trustees have any requirements, if the land is to live fallow, so it's not being harvested, it's in a rest. And in terms of structures and buildings, within the farmstead area, it does have that allowance of the 10,000 square feet of floor area. But those structures are supposed to be incidental to agricultural animal husbandry. If it doesn't have any farming or livestock taking place on the farm, are those structures legally allowed to be there that we've previously approved? And this includes the farm stand, obviously. They do know that clearly the farm stand can't be open because 51% of it had to be grown on the farm. So that's not a concern at this point, but the general floor area. The use of vehicles and other motorized equipment needs to be incidental to farming and forestry activities. So if they're not conducting these activities, should they be present on the property, or can they legally be present on the property? Because that's kind of a specific use that's mentioned in the CR. Are the activities being proposed at the property considered commercial recreation, even though the trustees are a nonprofit organization? And for this, I was thinking of just going to the website and pulling out some of their, upcoming activities and the descriptions of what those include. And is the holding of kind of paid activities on the property in violation of the purposes of the CR, mostly in relation to direct general public access of the property? If there's no livestock on the property, does the placement of fencing interfere with the purposes of the CR? Because it talks about site pervious fencing, but also is this inhibiting general access? They say kind of we're not allowed in the fenced in areas where the pens were, but there's no animals there any longer. So something to think about. And then something that we kind of went back and forth with at the previous meeting was talking about the trails and the maintenance of the trails. The CR requires that the grantors adequately maintain all of the public trails. So, kind of getting an understanding is it within the commission's purview to request a trail maintenance plan, to agree on what the definition of adequately is, because there has been a lot of concerns about downed trees and accessibility of the trails in the last 5 years or so. So that's kind of some of the brief ones that I put together. We don't need to decide on this tonight. These were just kind of my initial thoughts as I've been going through things to think about before the meeting. I was also kind of reading the CR a little bit more, and kind of I think what I didn't realize before is that the general access in passive recreation is allowed everywhere on the property but the farmstead area. So if the farmstead area is supposed to be strictly for farming, agricultural and animal husbandry related items, when they're holding these activities in the farmstead area, is that a concern? So that's something that I hadn't thought about before, but maybe something to be brought up.
First,
So that's
Melissa,
where I am.
thank you for doing such a deep dive on this. I know the CR is not light reading. It's a lot to take in.
And I can't remember where I saw it. I was trying to find it before this meeting. There is somewhere, I thought it was in the CR about opening of a stone wall, and it was conditional upon, is allowance in the CR, but there was one condition that I did see that I'm gonna find for the next meeting, about they had additional access for a break in a stone wall, but only if the farm was in active operation. And if the farm was to not be in operation, that stone wall had to be replaced back. I'm trying for the life of me to find that. When I do, I'll send that off, but I read that somewhere last week.
Was that in the old management plan?
Maybe that's what it was.
It rings a bell with me too. It's been so long since I've gone through.
Okay. I'll check. Maybe that's what it was. I'll check that one. But just some very kind of odds and ends things that have, I think every time I read the CR, I find another section or like one use that I didn't see before. And I've read this thing, I don't know how many times in the last almost 6 years. So it's very nuanced, but those are kind of the initial things that I think would be useful for us to have an understanding of. And I think instead of reaching out to SVT, I think reaching out to town council is actually the better option for this one. Not that I think SVT is great. They also have, their other properties that are adjacent to it. So I think just to keep this a little bit cleaner, maybe town council is the way to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've always enjoyed working with SVT. We also don't want to put them in a situation that'd be uncomfortable to them.
Yep.
So,
Should you add something about what their requirements are about maintaining wildlife habitat? I know there's been a lot of concern about the field nesting birds, and
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this was, just the things my brain could put down on paper today. So I'm more than happy to, for the next meeting, or incidentally in between, put a little bit more formal of things that we want to talk about together. The trustees will be at our next meeting on the 30th, unless you guys have any other reason not to, but that was the plan. They were going to be here tonight, but DA is out of the country. So I've also been, you know, I think also I was going to tag team with Freddie from Open Space. So if I know she's had a lot of things that are concerns that have come up, to make sure if there's anything specific that's not included in this, that would be under our purview. So for the next meeting, I will kind of rehash this a little bit more. If you guys think of anything you want to add, please just, you know, send me an email, send me a text. I'm happy to add it to the list and try and move through it that way.
Melissa, I think this is a great list. I want to thank you for putting it together. I do wonder a lot about, you know, the construction of that great big barn that was supposed to be to support the farming activity, and now
Yeah.
they're renting it out for.
Yeah. And that's one I didn't explicitly write here, but that's, yeah, another one of is the rental of the barn and allowed use.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It happens rarely, but when we get town council in to have a free-ranging discussion, it's always super helpful.
Mhm.
Really, it really is. It would be great if we could get somebody from that office to join one of our meetings. And have an executive, start off an executive session and actually have this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, yeah, I'll see what magic I can work, and maybe not for the 30th, but you know, maybe we'll see what comes out of the 30th a little bit more, and if necessary, we'll have a kind of dedicated time to discuss this with town council or anyone else.
Perfect.
And also really quickly, and Liz, I promise. So one thing we haven't thought about is enforcement order for 34 Sears for the stream restoration on the abutting property. It's not necessarily immediate, so I think if you guys are good for the next meeting, I want to get that on the agenda. I'll have something drafted. I think it's important to carry through with, you know, what we said we're going to do. So I'll have on the 30th an enforcement order for 34 Sears for the stream restoration.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
There's also goats at 14 Oregon, but I'm dealing with it, so it's okay. There's 30 goats.
Holy cow. What number? 14, you said?
30.
30.
30 goats.
No, what number Oregon Road?
Oh, 14.
14 Oregon Road. Holy cow.
Yep. Yep. So I'm working through that a little bit with Board of Health, a little bit on our side too, and talking with the animal control officer. So there's been a bunch of random things happening, a lot of chickens, a lot of goats. 'Tis the season, so it's always fun. Now I'm done.
Listen, I did notice the salt is gone.
Oh, yes, the salt storage shed at the MBTA is gone. I also roped them in because there's been flooding, historic flooding on the section of the road right there, the main road that meets the MBTA entrance. Me and DPW, Bill Cunda have kind of ganged up on them, so they will be cleaning out those catch basins in June. And I believe they also are looking at that wetland basin essentially to the left of the entrance that really needs to be cleaned out as well. So we might get double duty fix on some issues that's been out there.
Melissa, is there a place in town that defines how many goats would be allowed?
So one thing that I've learned is that no, we have no livestock bylaw. We have the only regulations we have is stables and dogs. Everything else in between is lost and forgotten. So something that I've added to my list is to try and start to research what that looks like. My initial findings is it's mostly under Board of Health regulations, but I think for Southborough, we have so many wetlands, and I really want to make sure that some setback distances also get put into there. But yeah, it's very surprising we don't have an acre, a size per acre limit for a lot of animals, because 30 on a relatively small lot is a lot. It's a lot of goats. So that's a little bit on my bucket list this year. So hopefully I get a little bit of time to go through some livestock bylaws.
Okay.
All right.
Goats and asbestos. It's been a really good week.
Okay. I think it's time for everyone's favorite motion. Somebody care to do the honors? I'll do it. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And okay, second?
Second,
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
guys.
Have a
Thanks for
great
dealing
night.
with my craziness. My
Always.
brain's
Bye-bye.
bye guys.